Okay, good morning, FSACCI members, friends, and members of our South African French business community at large. It is my absolute pleasure today to welcome you to a special edition of FSACCI's COVID-19 webinar series with His Excellency Aurelien Lechevallier, the Ambassador of France to South Africa and Lesotho. So welcome to all those coming through. So following from a brief note from the ambassador, who will be outlining the activity and phases that the French embassy has taken during this period, we will open up for a Q&A session. And really, I'd like to encourage everyone, this is really the opportunity to engage, not only with the ambassador, but really with the French and South African business community at large. We have over 110 registrations for today. So really, this is the opportunity to engage. You can do so in two ways. You'll see at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A box where you can type your questions. Alternatively, you can raise your hand and we will unmute you and you can ask your question to the ambassador or to the general community at large as well. So it is my absolute pleasure now to hand over to the ambassador, who will be providing that brief overview of their activities. But today is really all about dialogue, so please don't be shy, engage with us today. And on that note, I'd like to hand over to you, Mr. Ambassador. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Amy. I hope you are all doing well. Actually, it's absolutely a pleasure. I'm delighted to be with you today. I guess that we never enjoyed social interaction that much during this very, very strange period of time. But thank you very much for inviting me to this webinar. And actually, I would like to commend and congratulate the South African French Chamber of Commerce for all its activities, especially since the beginning of the lockdown. You have organized many web seminars, workshops, training sessions, conversations, and I think it was very important to be really active in that particular moment. So today I'm very pleased to be with you. I look forward to our Q&A's session. I would like maybe to start by sharing with you a few thoughts regarding the current situation and also the role of the embassy, what we've been doing so far, and also what is ahead of us now. So obviously the COVID-19 crisis for us is really a total change. Everything has been upside down for the last weeks. I must say that at the beginning it was quite sad, of course, because we would follow the progress of the epidemic in Asia, in Europe, in America, and in Africa, with lots of cases, positive cases, victims everywhere. And we, of course, realized that it would affect our entire lives. And if we look at South Africa, we had many activities going on. I think it's the same for you on your end. And so we had to sadly cancel many things, many events, many programs, many initiatives. We had to postpone as much as we could different projects that we were working on, and oftentimes we had been working on these projects for weeks and months, and everything was affected by that. Just to give you a couple of examples, like major examples, we were working on a presidential visit. So President Emmanuel Macron was supposed to come to South Africa. We had the dates already, the 20th and 21st of May, and we were working actively on the preparation for the visit. And obviously, because of the situation, we had to reconsider and postpone this. Another example, we worked a lot, including with the business community, on the organization of the Africa-France Summit in Bordeaux in early June. It was supposed to be a major summit involving heads of state and government, but also the business communities, scientific communities, local leaders, entrepreneurs from all over Africa. And obviously, again, we had to postpone, and now we will see how this summit will take place, maybe between the end of this year or next year in 2021. Another example in the cultural field, we were organizing a big cultural season in France around Africa called the Africa 2020 cultural season. Actually, it was more than artistic performances. It was also about really conversations, debates all around Africa, and this had to be postponed as well. So in the first period of this COVID crisis in South Africa, we had to engage with lots of partners to see how we could change, of course, our schedule, change our plans, and postpone many projects and many events. Trying not to destroy everything, of course, trying to maintain, to save as much as we could the work that we had been doing, maintaining this dynamic for the future, but taking into consideration the current circumstances. But then we had to reorganize. I think it's the same with you in your environment, in your working professional environments. We had to readjust all our organization to plan a new, let's say, a team structure. And we focused really on three main priorities, very different priorities. We have been focusing on these priorities for the last weeks now. The first priority for us was more on the consular side, that is to take care of the French people, the French community. We had to accompany and support all the French people stranded in South Africa and in the region, mostly tourists, and thankfully South Africa welcomes a lot of French tourists every year, and it was still the end of the let's say active touristic season. So we had many French people stranded in South Africa in March and April, and we, with our consulates general in Cape Town, in Johannesburg, covering the whole of South Africa, we worked a lot to be interacting with the French people, trying to find solutions for them to go back to Europe, to France, or to the countries where they live in. So all in all, we could accompany more than 5,000 French people back to France and other countries. So that's quite a very significant number. Before the lockdown, we had to organize the repatriation flights with the South African authorities, and all in all, with our European partners and South African DIRCO and other governmental agencies, we organized 25 flights to travel these European citizens back to Europe. So it was quite hard work, a lot of logistics, lot of organization. It was very time consuming, but we had to do it, and all in all, it went well. These stranded French citizens were mostly tourists or business people in short-term missions. We also repatriated French citizens living in South Africa, but being very vulnerable to the COVID-19, people with co-infections, diseases, specific personal situations that we had to take into account. So they were also, of course, covered by these repatriation flights. But regarding the French community living in South Africa, so the one we call residents, like you and me, the message from the embassy and from the French authorities in Paris was to stay at home, not to leave the country, to respect the guidelines, the instructions by the South African government, to face the situation and wait for better days being very cautious and respectful of these instructions. And I must say, and I would like to thank you also for that, that we have been pretty respectful. We understood the decisions made by President Ramaphosa, made by the South African government, and I think we all have been trying to be as careful as we could to stand this situation. So that was the first priority, and actually last Sunday was the last European flight going back to Europe with French citizens. So that phase, if I must say, is over now, and so we will focus more on the situation of the French residents in the weeks to come. The second priority for us was to engage with the business community in South Africa. You know that the business community in South Africa is very active. Most of the time you are part of it directly. We have almost 370 French companies in South Africa working here, making products here, delivering services here in all the different sectors. And from the very beginning of the crisis, one of our top priorities has been to engage really with the French companies and their partners and the South African authorities to make sure that we could go through this difficult, this very dire situation in the best possible way. So we've been in touch, obviously, with the representatives of the French business community here, the business counselors, the business advisors, the South African French Chamber of Commerce, your chairman, all the board on a weekly basis and oftentimes on a daily basis to make sure that we would exchange all the information we have, to make sure that we assess correctly the situation, to make sure that we address the challenges, that we deliver joint messages also to the South African authorities, and trying to promote as much as we can the interests of our companies in mutual interest also of the South African economy. So that kept us very busy. In this period of time also, we have tried to promote actively. I don't know if you saw that on the website of the French embassy and the French consulates, and also on our social networks, but trying to promote also what our French companies have been doing to support the people of South Africa. Our main message today is to say that South Africa and France are together in that fight, in the fight against COVID-19. And I think that our companies have shown that with many examples that we have been covering in our digital communication. And I think we will very actively continue to do so. And that's, of course, a priority that I'm sure we will discuss during our interactive session in a few minutes. So that's very important part, very important priority, to make sure that we keep engaging very actively with our French community and with our business community. The last or the third top priority on our agenda these last weeks is more on the diplomatic front, on the geopolitical front, if I may say. It's about Africa as a whole, Africa as a continent, and the impact of COVID-19 on Africa. It's really, it has been very impressive to see how our leaders have been working together to try to push for a strong response to Africa regarding the impact of the coronavirus. President Macron has been, from the beginning of the crisis, very vocal to say that Africa would deserve a special attention. Actually, at the end of March, there was an extraordinary summit of the G20, where both President Ramaphosa and President Macron attended. And President Macron used his slot, his 5-minute slot during this extraordinary VTC G20 summit to tell all the participants that we should focus our attention, our multilateral response towards Africa. And after this, our two presidents, they talked over the phone, they had different meetings. For the first time, maybe in history, the French president was invited to join a video conference of the African Union board. So it was quite extraordinary as well, to discuss the strategy to support Africa in the fighting against COVID-19. There was also, maybe you saw it, an op-ed in Financial Times and other newspapers and websites and media all over the world, with 18 leaders from Europe and from Africa to develop this strategy in terms of strengthening the health system, providing humanitarian relief to the most vulnerable countries, strengthening the networks of scientists between Africa and Europe, and also working on a big economic stimulus package, including debt relief for Africa in the days and weeks to come. So that has kept us also very busy because we had to engage on a daily basis with the Department of International Relations here, with the Office of President Ramaphosa, trying to coordinate and mobilize our partner to make sure that we would go towards the same direction, and trying to promote a collective response. Because as you may have noticed, there is a tendency to react to the crisis with single solutions or bilateral solution, where we think that the most effective way, the proper way actually to respond to the crisis is to build a collective response through the United Nations agencies, through the WHO, the World Health Organization, through the multi-donor funds. So that's really what France has been trying to promote, and South Africa has been very aligned on this. So this is also a very important diplomatic front that we've been working on. Maybe just a few additional comments, and then I will turn back the mic to Amy. As you may know, in South Africa, the embassy has also a regional scope because we play a regional role also for the countries and the French embassies around, especially Lesotho, of course, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia. And that has been also a very important mission from the beginning of the crisis, to stay in touch with all our colleagues in the region, all our partners. For example, regarding the repatriation flights, we have been working, of course, with the other embassies to make sure that we could find solutions for everybody. And last weekend, for example, we had French people coming from Namibia and from Botswana to board also in the planes in Johannesburg to go back to Europe, and also to monitor the situation regarding the developments of the coronavirus. We have been working on a weekly basis with all the embassies to try to better understand the developments of the situation. So this is one important point, the regional dimension. Second comment I would like to make is that, of course, we are locked down. Of course, we are working from home. Well, actually, I am at the embassy now, but it's quite exceptional for you. But it does not prevent us from keeping engaging with our partners. So really, we've been trying to stay in touch with most of our partners. I think, for example, of the civil society organizations, the NGOs, and we decided to take a part of the budget of the embassy to support activities for the NGOs on the field, trying always to be in touch, to stay in touch, to continue the dialogue with our partners. A last comment, but a very important one, is the fact that, of course, the situation now is very difficult, is very challenging on many aspects, and we live under lots of constraints. But it's also a time of opportunities, especially to imagine things with anticipation, to imagine new projects, new initiatives, to try to forecast what we could do, maybe in a better ways, with better results in the coming weeks and months. Just maybe one or two quick examples on that. The culture, for example, the cultural dimension of our activities, we've been trying to remain very creative, even if, of course, it was difficult for us to cancel the cultural performances, the festivals, the exhibitions. We are working on digital, on different platforms, digital projects, to continue to reach out our public and promote the South African French cultural relations through internet and digital tools. So this is an important part also of our work right now. And regarding another quick example, regarding the universities and the mobility of the students and exchanges between South Africa and France, of course, it's harder now to work with the universities, but we have managed to remain in touch with the universities, with the students, and we are organizing exchanges for next year, obviously not for now, but for next year, during this period of time, taking advantage on the fact that we can anticipate for the months to come. So thank you very much again for your attention. It's great for me to be with you this morning, and I would like now to give back the floor to Amy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, and thank you very much to those who have just joined us now. We've just had a quick update on the activities and really, I think, the coordinated action that the embassy is taking at this moment with their relevant partners. And I think what is poignant that came out of that is really a testament to how, despite these times of crisis, that really we have seen a great coming together and a spirit of innovation and creativity, which I think is certainly true of the French Chamber as well, but of course of our common community, both South African and French. And I'd just like to say thank you for those who have joined us and who are busy joining us at the moment. We're still having people coming through. We have over 100 people, both French and South African, so welcome to all of you. As the ambassador said, really this as an interactive session today, so please do make use of it. You can either pose your questions. I see we have a couple coming through on the Q&A as well as a hand. So welcome to all the business company, to the businesses, members of FSACCI, members of the community, to the chairman of the French South African Chamber, as well as the EXCO and the board. Welcome, and we look forward to engaging with you, Mr. Ambassador. So we have quite a few questions coming through, so I'm going to go straight into those, and then I will take a hand from Alexandre. So to kick off, we have a question from Anna, who says, thank you for this opportunity. Are there any funds available from the French government, Foreign Affairs, to support French entrepreneurs who settled with settled companies in South Africa and that are now in difficulties to pay their employees, local mainly, and to continue their activities? I think, Anna, I'll let the ambassador see if you can answer that one, but just a reminder that we do have a dedicated Q&A page on the French Chamber website, and I believe there is some funding available from BP on that, so you're welcome to check that out. But Mr. Ambassador, are there any funds available from the French government?
Well, Thank you very much for the question. Actually, as you know, France has been very active in South Africa to support the innovation ecosystem in general. Since 2016, we have a French tech network in the province of Western Cape, and we launched the French Tech in Johannesburg last October in 2019. So in terms of fundings, we don't have, unfortunately, some kind of permanent funds coming from the French embassy. We are more supportive of networks, of incubators, working, for example, very closely with the South African agency SIDA on the promotion of startups through different projects. But what we are trying really to do and to push is for more exchange of information between the different innovation partners and leaders between South Africa and France, to make sure that all the different resources and sources of financing are known by everyone. And in terms of partners, of course, you will find responses and availability at the South African French Chamber of Commerce, but also you can look at what Business France is doing, promoting the activity of small and medium-sized enterprises in South Africa, and the French Development Agency, AFD, which has also a very active policy to support entrepreneurship and innovation in South Africa.
Thank you very much. And I believe we do have Bruno from AFD present here today. So feel free to add some comment if you would like, Bruno, or in fact, anyone present today. This is really a chance to engage with one another and rely on each other's information and expertise. So we have quite a few more questions coming through. Please, just a reminder, you're welcome to ask as many questions as you want. We have the ambassador at our disposal for the next hour or so. But I'd like to take next a hand from Alexandre, who is part of the Cape Town Steering Committee. Alexandre, welcome, and you're live with us.
Yeah. Thanks, Amy. Yes, I'm with you, and I was very interested about the situation of the small company in Cape Town, because majority of the small company entrepreneur, and it's important to see how the French embassy can help. And I think the ambassador gives the right answer, like help with the network and make business at the end of the day. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for this intervention.
Okay, perfect. I think we're going to take another question from Celine this morning, who says, good morning. I understand Mr. Ambassador has been lobbying the government to allow wine exports. Wine export, including the possibility to ship wines that are ready. This should be allowed from the 1st of May, but also the possibility for labels, printers, bottling companies, cork supplies, etc. to work. Is there any progress on that front?
Well, thank you very much, Amy. Well, I hope so. We've been actively committed to providing support to all the sectors of the economy, and the wine industry has been one of them. From the beginning of the lockdown, we were in touch with different winemakers, but not only winemakers, also the different industries in general in the agribusiness and around winemaking. And I personally supported a démarche towards the Minister of Trade and Industry to make sure that the exports of wine could be authorized during the lockdown. Actually, it went a little bit back and forth. because during a certain moment, these exports were allowed, but then during the lockdown, it was closed again. So we had, let's say, an emotional journey here. But as far as I understand now, with the new phase moving forward, we really hope that the exports of the wine production will be able to resume freely from the 1st of May. And it's very important because I actually there is no impact on no problems, no challenges with the health situation in South Africa, and it's really a big push, a big help, especially in the Western Cape, but not only, also all around South Africa, to a sector which is quite vulnerable if we block it entirely. So at the very beginning of the lockdown phase, we also managed to make sure that the harvest could continue, and we will keep supporting this sector in the days and weeks to come. But it's not the only one. We've been working also very hard on the energy sector, transportation sector, banking sector as well, to try to help with targeted démarches our South African French companies as much as we can.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move to a set of questions. There's quite a few coming in, of course, regarding flights and returning travel to and from France. So I think maybe we can deal with these collectively, Mr. Ambassador. So the first one from Xavier, he would like to know just a question about French residents who need to fly back to France. Will there be any flights opening? And we also have a question from those who are stuck in France and need to return back to South Africa. What's the update on that? And also we have a very important question regarding, will there be any flights opening for pets? Because those who need to leave the summer back to France will also need to send their pets. Do you have any update on that? And finally, we have a question from Angelica, who says, many French expatriates and their families in South Africa still intend to travel to France for the usual summer holidays. Will entry to South Africa restrictions from high-risk countries such as France? What is the French embassy's position in terms of the communication with French nationals in this regard? So what is your position on the communication that you will provide to French expatriates living in South Africa and their plans to travel back to France for the summer holidays? Sorry, there's quite a few questions in there. Would you like me to repeat, or?
No worries. Thank you very much. I will try to answer them all, and if I forget something, please let me know. Actually, these are very important questions that are flying all around us at the moment. Obviously, so the principle, you remember, during this very special period of time is that the non-resident French citizens or European citizens had to go back to Europe. And the residents in South Africa, we have to stay here to stay safe, to stay home, and to respect the instructions of the South African government. So that's where we are at the moment. And actually, there are no flights now that are scheduled for the days to come. We don't have any special flights like set up scheduled in May, for example. So really, it will depend also on the demand, on the supply and demand. Of course, if we have other European tourists, and I think there are still maybe a few dozens of European tourists stranded in South Africa, then an airline company could decide to arrange a flight to come to South Africa or to fly from South Africa to go to Europe. That's always a possibility for the non-residents. Now, for the residents, it's more complicated because, as you said, there is a lack of clarity now, because there are different situations. One situation is concerns the permanent residents. So this is a very limited number of visas that allow people to remain permanently in South Africa, and for them they are considered for the transport like the other South African people. But it's not the case for the regular working permits or for the temporary status of residents. That means that today, if you are, let's say, an expatriate in a French company or in a South African company in South Africa, you may go back to France, but you would not be authorized to come back to South Africa as long as these lockdown regulations are going on. And as you saw from the different announcements made by President Ramaphosa, and it will be detailed and it will get more specific in the days to come by the different ministers, but the resuming of the international flights, for example, is only anticipated for the stage 1. So at the very end of the unlock process. So obviously, depending on the progress and the development of the disease, that could lead us to, I don't know, August, maybe even September. We don't know. Actually, we don't know when the peak, the spike of the pandemic in South Africa will happen, and so we don't know when we will reach this stage 1 period where all the international flights will resume normally as we knew before. So meanwhile, we have to work on different possibilities, and the French embassy and the consulates general are very actively engaging with the South African authorities to find solutions. And we are working also with you, with the Chamber of Commerce, with the economic advisors, to make sure that we can try to find solutions for the families and the professional people to travel outside of South Africa and to go back safely to South Africa. Maybe following a quarantine, so 2 weeks of quarantine before being tested negative and go back to their normal life. But so far, we're not sure that these conditions will be met. We hope that the families will be able to go to France, to Europe during summertime. We hope they will be able to travel with their pets. I think as long as we have flights, we could arrange exceptional repatriation requests, like pets, for example. That could be possible. We hope that business people will be able to go to travel to other African countries or European countries and come back to South Africa. But again, today it is not the case. So today we have to be patient. We have to make sure that the South African authorities understand what is the situation from our point of view. That is the fact that we need also French citizens to be able to travel as soon as we can, but we lack clarity, and we will need to continue to ask questions and make sure that we get proper answers in the weeks to come.
Thank you very much for dealing with those immigration questions. I see we have a couple more coming through, so thank you for all those asking questions. We're here to answer them here today. And we have, I believe we have a hand, which I believe has now gone, but from the French school, so I think we'll deal with a couple of those questions. And we have a specific question from Diana, and she would like to know, will the French school in Johannesburg follow opening guidelines from South African government or from the French government?
Well, regarding the schools in Johannesburg and in Cape Town and in Pretoria, actually, because we have 3 French campuses, French school compounds, we will obviously carefully look at what South Africa is doing, and we will also be in touch with the French authorities to follow the developments of the unlock in France. But what I can tell you and tell Diana is that we will make that decision on a local basis, and it will be made by the school, by the board of the schools, and by the French embassy, taking into consideration all the different science-based knowledge that we have, all the different conditions of the health environment, and we will see what it takes and what we decide. There are different options, maybe 3 options, more or less. We have, of course, the possibility to open the French schools by the end of June, so that the pupils can go back to school before the end of the scholar year, which ends at the end of June. But honestly speaking, this is very, very unlikely today. I don't see how we could meet these conditions given the current situation of the COVID-19. So it's one option, but very unlikely. There is another option, of course, at the other side of the spectrum, is to maintain the situation as it is today. And I want to also commend and congratulate the French schools teachers and boards and all the different actors of the schools, because they have been shaping really an incredible learning from distance learning programs quite rapidly, and it's working well for the children. So a strong option for us is to maintain this situation until the end of the scholar year, and hope that by September the conditions will be met to open the school for the next school year. And we can also consider options in between, like, for example, authorizing certain families, certain pupils to go back to school, exactly like what they are considering in France at the moment after May 11th. But I would say that this option is quite unlikely also to me today. But we are looking at that very, very seriously, working with the boards of the French schools, looking at what South Africa and France are doing, but we will make our own decision.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. And then I see we have a more business-related political question from Terry, which he would like me to read out. However, it is quite a long one. So Terry, if you're up for it, I think it would be much easier if we could unmute you. However, just to give you a bit of content, Terry's question reads as follows. Finance Minister Tito Mboweni declared a few days ago, and I quote, "People who want to approach banks or government for funding must demonstrate that they do have a labor market and employment policy that favors South Africans," unquote. In a country that's experienced, and this is the direct words from Terry here, in a country that's experienced intermittent violence targeting foreigners before, this is worrying for French people working or looking for work in South Africa, because especially for thousands of Francophone Africans who make a living here. Essentially, what Terry would like to ask is if the ambassador, or could you, ambassador in South Africa, kindly and diplomatically warn South African government against potential discrimination against permanent residents or temporary ones working with permits? This is a direct question from Terry. I don't know if you have any comments on that, Mr. Ambassador.
Well, thank you very much. It's a delicate question, but also a very important one. Certainly, we can understand that given the figures of the unemployment in the country, especially for young people, maybe between 30% and 50% for people under 25. The employment and jobs creation for young South Africans, and actually all South Africans, is a top priority for the government. So it's not very surprising that the Minister of Finance or other ministers, including President Ramaphosa himself, mentions this jobs creations priority oftentimes as a very a top one in the political and economic agenda. So that's obviously we can understand and share these concerns and wish South Africa the best for creating as many jobs as possible, especially for the new generation. Now, what we have been continuously saying to our South African interlocutors and our South African partners is that there is also a great need for foreign partnership, for foreign expertise. And it's a wonderful opportunity for South Africa to attract investments, to attract businesses in South Africa. And it's the same for France. We're happy when, let's say, the Aspen South African pharmaceutical company invests in France. We're happy. That's what we're trying to do also, to attract investment and foreign businesses. And we understand that even if we are also working to better our employment figures, that would mean that South African executives, business representatives would then work in France. Well, it's the same for us. So we are always saying to the different South African partners here that they should welcome the fact that French engineers, French entrepreneurs, French executives work in South Africa and are offered great conditions and good visa situation. Now I feel that in at the Department of Home Affairs, and also I can see from the situation at the South African Embassy in France, for example, the South Africans under the Ramaphosa administration have been much more helpful and understand that better. And we want this dialogue to continue. We want also to stress the fact that the French companies in South Africa are very respectful of the South African regulation. We don't come here to extract resources from South Africa, send them back to our countries without creating any kind of added value for South Africa. On the other way around, we are working on mutual partnerships with a lot of training for young people. And actually, we are developing now a new project called French Skills, where we will really highlight the fact that many French companies are involved in different training certifications, training programs for South African young people to give them more skills. And actually the fact that French workers and French engineers and French business leaders work and live in that country is an opportunity for South Africa. That's our message.
Perfect. And as a South African, I think that's a good message. Thank you, Aurelien. We have a couple, I've just noted, we have quite a few specific questions related to immigration. And I think they're quite personal in nature as well and quite technical. So I'd like to encourage everyone who does have a specific immigration question, please feel free to reach out to the FSACCI team. We have a host of companies who deal with immigration and a specialist who is also answering questions on our Q&A. So we'll be able to put you in touch directly with the specialists who have those expertise, and I'm sure they will be happy to assist you with any visa or immigration questions. So please do get in touch with us and we'll be happy to help you on that front. We have another question from the French Nursery School, and they would like to know, Mr. Ambassador, if things were to continue and in the instance where people would be in dire financial need due to the COVID-19 in South Africa, and they would be forced to go back to France, what kind of support would there be upon their return, particularly if they are paying their French taxes as well?
Thank you very much. Yes, we know that that several French people and especially young French companies are struggling at the moment, and these questions are raising everywhere, not only in South Africa but in Africa and around the world in general. As I said, the instructions we received from France is to try to let's say continue this dialogue with the French community, with the companies, to better understand the situation, to see what we could do from here, from South Africa. Thanks also maybe to the different measures that were announced by the South African government, because this response is, and then the plan that was announced by South Africa is quite massive. This 500 billion rands plans. So hopefully it could also bring some support to our community and our companies here, in the interest of South African economy and jobs creation here in South Africa. So that's something that we are very actively working on. I know also, of course, you've been following the situation in France and Europe, that we are also implementing support and stimulus economic package for the companies. In our French system, the agency Business France has the responsibility to see how this support stimulus mechanisms could also benefit to French companies abroad. So through the French South African Chamber of Commerce or through Business France, I encourage everyone to ask questions and explain their situation and raise their concern, to see what kind of solutions we could promote. In very difficult situations, of course, we would help a French citizen, a French family to go back to France. That's for sure. This is our consular mission. Again, for the moment, it does not apply in general to the resident French community, but in case of very difficult, vulnerable personal situation, we would be listening, of course, at your disposal to envisage several options, including a repatriation to France. And I think it's really worth sharing your information, your situation, to see what we can do regarding the different tools that we're having handy at the moment in South Africa.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive answer there, Mr. Ambassador. And I'd just like to announce to all those, I see we have some big CEOs of big French companies as well as South Africans here today. Really, this is if you have any questions for the Ambassador, this is the time to do it. I think we're going to take one last round of questions before we let the Ambassador get back to his very busy schedule of coordinating. So we have another question from Aurelien. Just a reminder again, if you have any specific visa questions, it is a common thing, and we know it is something of great urgency for each individual. So please, we're here to assist with any information that we can. If you have specific visa questions, please do get in touch with us, and we will help you find the correct specialist in order to answer those questions. However, Mr. Ambassador, we do have a question from Aurelien, and she asks, if the situation regarding COVID-19 becomes really concerning in South Africa, do the French authorities plan to massively repatriate non-permanent French residents? And if yes, how long would it take? I'm not sure if you can shed some light on that, or if it's a question about how long a piece of string is, but if you have any insight into that, I think people would appreciate it. Of course, this is a very unsettling time.
Thank you very much for the question. You know, there was a famous spokesman at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs who said this very simple sentence that never answer a question that starts with F. So, but I will try to answer the question. No, there is no plan, no massive repatriation plan, especially because we are following the situation. We are concerned, of course, by the development of COVID-19 in South Africa, like in other African countries, and then we have seen the impact and the catastrophic impact of coronavirus in different countries. But the situation is not leading us to consider today a massive plan of repatriation. We commend and support the South African government in the decisions that were made from the very beginning of the crisis. I think that President Ramaphosa was very clever and wise to support his policy and the policy of his administration and the government on science-based knowledge and also on lessons learned from other countries and other continents. And the decision of the lockdown was not an easy one. We see the very difficult, harsh economic consequences, but it was certainly a good one. And now, of course, we will see how this new phase will follow, and we will keep following also the figures of the pandemic in South Africa. But we plan to support the South African authorities in their national endeavor, in their national fight against the virus, saying that France is with South Africa in that fight and not considering a massive plan of repatriation. We want to stay here, to stay safe, to participate in that fight, and hopefully to overcome that crisis together.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I think that's important to note. It's something as the French Chamber we have had a lot of discussion about, but also a lot of people have commented to us, and I think a general thing is just a sense of admiration that has been shared for the way that Cyril Ramaphosa as well as the South African government has gone about dealing with this crisis as well. And certainly I know from a lot of the big French companies there's a sense of recommendation that we need to stay and we need to support each other through this time and really stay in South Africa. If we have, we're sharing some of these things on our website as well. So if anyone would like to have a look about what some of the top French companies are doing in South Africa during this time of crisis and really embracing this time as a way to provide support to the community at large, you can check out our website with regards to that. But I think really on that note, Mr. Ambassador, that is a great way to end off with a sense of positivity. I don't know if you have any final comments on that before we close. I see we have come to the end of the Q&A session. So if anyone has final questions, you have about 1 minute to raise them before I hand over to the Ambassador and we do a short closing. Mr. Ambassador, do you have any final comments before we end off?
No, I would say that, again, the situation is very challenging. It's very difficult. That we are unfortunately sharing these difficult times all over the world, but it's also a moment when we want to put cooperation, solidarity ahead. So it's very important to act accordingly. And then I would like also to really underline the fact that we are lucky in South Africa to have a wonderful team surrounding the French community. It's very impressive. Not only the embassy and the two consulates, but the Chamber of Commerce, the Economic Advisor, the Business France, the Development French Agency, and there is the French Tech, and there is a good harmony, a lot of leadership shown during this crisis and beyond. and this very good and inspiring and stimulating environment is really an opportunity for us and for the French South African community, because they know that they will find interlocutors and that the information will circulate properly, that there is a good level of coordination between the different actors. And I think that we have to take advantage of this. And again, stressing the fact that we are at the service and at the disposal of the French community and our South African partners. And I thank you very much for also this great opportunity to engage with you all, to spend some time with you. Looking forward to seeing you in nature, really. But at least this is a great way to spend time together. Thank you.
I couldn't have said it any better. And I think really even today, just with our webinar, we had around 100 people today from our community. And I think that really is a testament, not only to the vibrancy of the community, but really the ability for us to come together in times of crisis, and hopefully to do that when we are out in nature, as you said, Mr. Ambassador, as well. And I cannot end off the session again on that note without thanking our member companies, despite these difficult times, have continued to support the Chamber, and in turn allowed us to be able to provide these kind of sessions and the valuable support to other members of our community at large. So thank you very much to those companies here today who have continued to support us, and thank you for the individuals, for our friends, for our members who have joined us, and especially thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for your time and your expertise here today. We very much appreciate being able to see you in the flesh, if not in person. So thank you very much, and I'd like to extend our best wishes to you, to your staff at the embassy, to your teams, and to our fellow French and South African business partners. Please, we wish you the very best during this time. Reach out if you need any further assistance. We're here to help, and also please stay safe. And on that note, thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Take care and see you soon.